Yo, what's going on, man? It's that boy Zeus the Entertainer back in front of the camera again, man, to give you guys another video. Yo, we checking out some swamp stories, you dig what I'm saying? Shout out to the Swamp Story channel, you dig what I'm saying, for giving us this video, you dig what I'm saying? Hopefully they did their research, you dig what I'm saying, and they 100% about their information, because I don't know everything about BMF, but I feel as though, like, I know enough, I know back in the day, this was the most talked about family. You know what they went to jail for. We don't gotta get too much into that, but they did a lot of shit, man. They were well known, well respected, and it's just like now it's like they're so talked about. They're so like just normalized now. So it's like everybody wants to be the next BMF family, for real, for real. Like, because if you think about it, like, man, them motherfuckers had all types of money. Like, man, living the lifestyle that everybody wants to live, low key.
BMF, one of the biggest underground operations in American history. Millions of dollars, dozens of mansions, supercars, music labels, and so much more. This is an incredible story about how guys from the bottom infiltrated the mainstream world. From the treacherous streets of Detroit to yacht parties in Miami. You can find endless videos on this topic, but nowhere can you find a 30-minute documentary that covers everything from the beginning to the end. This is the story of the Black Mafia family. But before we get into it, make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you're new. You can also follow the Instagram page as well. So let's get into it. The story begins in Detroit, Michigan, once the wealthiest city on the planet in the 1950s. The growth of General Motors, Ford, and Chrysler brought thousands of jobs to the Detroit area. And of course, just as many Americans migrated north to fill these positions. So for 15 years, Detroit was flourishing and life was as good as it gets. But like all societies, things eventually took a downward turn. In the 1960s, factory workers went on strike and unionized for higher pay. And in response, the car companies moved their operations overseas, and because of this, unemployment riddled the city. By 1968, Detroit was a new city, completely unrecognizable by its former residents. Abandoned houses, schools, debris in the streets, and out-of-control crime. Detroit was now a dark place, but nowhere was worse off than Southwest Detroit. Southwest Detroit consists of about 10 neighborhoods, but for this video we start off in Boynton. The area is cut off by a river from the rest of the city, really making it its own community. This is truly the bottom of the bottom. So let's head down a dark abandoned alley all the way to the dead end. 1555 Edsel Street, one of 3 functional houses on the entire block. Here is where 2 brothers were born, Demetrius and Terry Flannery. Growing up, the 2 brothers had a difficult upbringing, but always managed to be okay. Demetrius was good looking, charismatic, and flashy. On the other hand, the younger Terry was more reserved and under the radar. Needless to say, the 2 brothers were polar opposite personalities, but despite their differences, they always shared one common trait. Since a very young age, the Flannerys always had a knack for hustling and getting money. From junior high school, the 2 hustled and sold anything they could get their hands on. Both equally as gifted, just went about it in completely different ways. Demetrius, also known as Meech, was flashy and always wanted the girls to see his wealth. Meanwhile, Terry hated the attention and always wanted to remain low-key. This will later be relevant, but for now we focus on how they got their start. By the time Meech was a junior in high school, his hustling ways had gotten serious. A steady income of $1,000 a week went a long way back in this time. Regardless, this was still a very small operation, especially compared to what was going on in East and West Detroit. Knowing Meech's—
But you gotta be real, like, back in the day, like 100%, $1,000 a fucking day was feeding everybody in the house. It was feeding everybody in that damn house. Like, the way that they were hustling, bro, and the way that they was making that money, you don't even make a fucking like, most of the jobs today, you gotta think you're not making $1,000 until Friday. They're making $1,000 a day. You do the math. Like, they were getting paid, even though it was a small operation at first.
his personality, he was not happy staying at this level. Well, in 1984, one of his friends named Kilo thought of a plan. Kilo's uncle was a man named E.D. Boyd, and this guy was a large distributor between Miami and Detroit. So Kilo's plan was to set up a meeting between his uncle and Meech. Well, eventually the meeting took place, and Meech made a great impression on E.D. He demonstrated the drive and determination to strike it rich. So the very next day, they started working together. They came up with a plan unlike any others in Detroit. They started selling $50 bags, far lower than anyone else in Detroit. Well, because of this, more and more customers began rushing in, so they needed to expand. Meech would invite his brother Terry and his best friend Derek Meeks to help out, and from here the operation took off. Due to their reputation for $50 bags, they became known as the 50 Boys of Southwest Detroit. People traveled from all over the map to come.
Oh shit, I never knew that that's how they got their name. I honest to God truth did not know that's how they got their name. Okay. Alright. I like that. Okay.
Get them, even neighboring states. By the start of 1985, Big Meech was wearing gold chains, mink coats, and driving foreign cars. But as we know, a life like this can get out of hand fast. So in order to keep everyone in check, ED called a meeting at his house on every Sunday night. Here, the 50 Boys ate dinner together and discussed what was going on in the streets. Early on, a big topic they battled over was Meech's flashiness. ED was trying to school him on why he shouldn't be outside looking like $1,000,000. It draws all of the wrong attention.
You couldn't take that flamboyant out of Meech, okay? He wanted to shine like that, okay? You couldn't take that from him.
Well, Meech, of course, was not.
You gotta think, motherfuckers is coming from the slums. You're coming from the dirt. Like, you see that shit as a young kid. You did what I'm saying? Like, I mean, even for myself, like, you know, I might see somebody driving a foreign car. I might see somebody, you know, wearing an iced out watch, wearing it. Like, that shit draws a lot of attention. But you gotta think, motherfuckers was not living like that, bro. Was not living like that. So you trying to be in a person's ear telling them not to wear that type of clothing, like, it's just gonna go in one ear and out the other. Like, bro was getting money and he wanted motherfuckers to know that. And now, was it smart if you're moving in that type of operation? No, it's not smart at all. So they was trying to school him, but you know, like I said, you gotta think, coming from the slums, coming from the dirt, coming from nothing, motherfuckers is going to do what they do at the end of the day. So it don't change nothing at all. Like, it's going in one ear and out the other.
Not gonna stop being flashy, and this would come back to haunt him later on. But for now, we focus on the early days in Detroit. E.D. Boyd had a long-lasting feud with a man named Leighton Simon, also known as the Beast. This rivalry started years before the 50 Boys even existed. Essentially, Leighton was a competitor, and he controlled an area called 12th Street. E.D. and Leighton Simon were big respected bosses, so they never tried to harm each other. Well, rumors say that in June of 1985, both Leighton Simon and the 50 Boys attended a boxing match in Las Vegas. The event was held at the infamous Caesars Palace, and all kinds of ballers were in attendance. Well, out of all these people, somehow Leighton Simon and Big Meech were standing right next to each other the whole time. And of course, Meech decided to test his gangster.
He kept bumping into me and shit. You know what I'm saying? And it was crowded. It was crowded. You know, I understand that. I can understand maybe 2 or 3 bumps. You know what I'm saying? I'm saying, my man, you bump me one more time, it's gonna be a problem in this.
Meech walked away. Leighton already disliked ED, but now he had a hatred for the 50s Boys. Unfortunately, this would start to cost them. And that takes us to 1987, the year that changed everything. At just 15 years old, Terry Flannery was already a star in Detroit. So like his brother, Terry wanted a nickname as well. So in order to pay homage to a local kingpin named Southwest T, Terry decided to adopt his name. Well, when he heard the news, the original Southwest T was conflicted. On one hand, the name was homage to his legacy, but on the other hand, it was kind of disrespectful. Well, coincidentally, not too long after, he found out that Terry was hanging out with some of his girls. And of course, this is what tipped him over the edge. February 22nd, 1987. Terry drives to his baby mom's house on 9th Street in Ecorse. He parks in the driveway and quickly rushes inside because of the weather. Well, little does he know the running saved his life because a rival is right across the street. Bam! Terry gets hit in the eye and his baby mom rushes him to the hospital. Thankfully, Terry was okay, but they did have to remove his eye. Directly after this happened, the 50 boys all met up. Nothing like this had ever happened to them and they had to figure out who did it. Was it Layton or the original Southwest T? To this day, the official answer has never been revealed.
No one knows.
No one knows.
Yeah, but that was the rumor.
Unfortunately, this was just the start of the chaos. Just a few months later, E.D. Boyd's nephew Kilo was found dead inside of his truck. This devastated the 50 boys and they started packing everywhere they went. You just never knew what could go down on a daily basis in Detroit. May 3rd.
You know what would like really be killing me though sometimes? Why don't motherfuckers just pack up and leave? Like, why are y'all always trying to stay there and continue going on with the bullshit? It never made sense to me. It never made sense to me. Because you got to think, if you're out there buying fucking chains and all of that shit, you know that shit's not cheap. So why not relocate and just have people work for you that you can trust? It never made sense to me.
3rd, 1987. The 50 boys drive out to Coney Island Diner on Woodward Ave. 30 deep, they sit in the parking lot playing music from their fancy cars. What they don't know is that Layton Simon lives right around the corner. Or maybe they do, and that's why they're there. Well, either way, Layton hears about this and rolls up with his brother. And from here, both sides let off. Bam! Layton was hit 4 times in the back, but thankfully he made it. However, he had to see his brother go, and this scarred him for life. His hatred for the 50 boys was now eternal, and he wanted to take out their top dog. But for now, he waited for the perfect opportunity. From this moment on, the 50 boys were as confident as ever. They defended themselves successfully against the Beast of Detroit, and of course they were making huge money in the process. Big Meech had gotten cocky, and in 1989 he wanted to prove another point to Layton. May 22nd, 1989, Big Meech decides to throw a block party right in front of Layton's grandma's house. He parks his car, plays music, and all of his friends join around. Well, when Layton gets the news, he's furious and heads that way instantly. What happens next is up for debate. Either way, Meech gets hit 12 times and is rushed to the hospital. Somehow he survived, but this definitely shook him up. So the 50 boys sat down with Meech and decided that they needed to change their lifestyle. And for Meech, this meant leaving Detroit for good. It wasn't an easy decision because leaving behind that local fame is a difficult choice. The 50 boys were easily the most popular guys in Detroit. However, Layton was not playing and their whole operation could end at any second. So nearly all of the 50 boys decided to leave Detroit behind. But not only did they need to change locations, they needed to change their business operations as well. So the 50 boys decided to take—
I'm sorry, but they should have left on the first hit. When your brother got hit, bro, you should have packed your shit up and left. It took for you to get hit like that for it to realize that it's real. Come on, man.
Take on a new identity, known as the Black Mafia Family. This represented their new plan, which resembled the Italian mafias of the 1900s. Street rivalries were now beneath them, and money was the only motivation. Instead of controlling one city, they decided to branch out all across the US. So here's how it went. Southwest T moved to LA, focused on making connections in California and hopefully Mexico. Big Meech headed to Atlanta, where he focused on distributions and finding clients. And honestly, for the first year, it was kind of a struggle. They went from making millions in Detroit to making thousands in Atlanta. However, one lucky connection would change everything. In 1990, Southwest T made a strong connection with a man named Wayne Jordan. This guy was connected all throughout Mexico, meaning he had the lowest prices on the market. So Southwest T and Wayne Jordan began doing business together. T opened a warehouse in LA where he packed up cars and sent his assistants on the road to Atlanta. This was the new game plan, and it worked like magic right off the bat. They sent their assistants all over the country to make connections, and because of this, life was wealthier than ever before. As we all know, money will amplify your character. Meech became as flashy as ever, and Atlanta was the perfect audience. He made it his home base. This is where he wanted to be top dog. So he and his guys would go to the club every night in their supercars, diamond chains, and mink coats. After a short while, the BMF name was the biggest thing in Atlanta. While Southwest T did not approve of this whatsoever. He was in LA, remaining as low-key as possible. So seeing his brother attract all this attention was definitely worrisome. But Meech had a completely different mentality. He wanted everyone to know who he was and what he did.
He said it was not worth doing. I'd rather know what I'm doing than not know what I'm doing.
Yes, he partied hard, but he worked even harder. Throughout the 1990s, Meech bought 8 mansions across Atlanta. All of these mansions were equivalent to T's warehouses in LA. So at these mansions, cars would be packed up and sent across the country. At a certain point, the operation was too much for the brothers to handle alone. They started hiring specialists in every field, and in 1998 they hired the very best and worst specialists at the same time. This would be a man named Doc Marshall, a math and economic genius. He introduced BMF.
I ain't trying to be rude, but Doc Marshall looked like a fucking snitch.
To a bunch of economic theories. I won't go into specifics, but he instantly made their business far more profitable. The only issue was that Doc was not from the streets, and we know what this can potentially lead to. But for now, let's focus on BMF's next journey, totally separate from their previous work. 2001. By this time, Meech was a major star in Atlanta's underworld, and through the streets he became close friends with a man named Jay Jenkins, also known as Young Jeezy. Jeezy was originally from the town of Hawkinsville, but became a major street hustler in Atlanta. Well, Jeezy allegedly turned his street money to a successful rap career, and as we all know, he became a superstar. Well, naturally, after watching this process, Meech wanted this for himself. The only problem was that he couldn't rap, so instead he started a music label called BMF Entertainment. His idea was that if he threw enough money into an artist, they'll eventually blow up and he'll make the money back. He wanted to sign Young Jeezy, but by this time he already had his own label. So instead, he signed a rapper named Blue Da Vinci. Well, the Blue Da Vinci experiment was off to a rocky start. This is despite Meech investing over $500,000 into each video. He gave him supercars and big features and it still didn't work. Essentially, he had everything on a platter and still failed. To Southwest T, this was a clear indication that the label needed to stop. The brothers got into heated arguments over this, which ultimately split them up. For the longest time, the brothers would check one another for making the wrong moves. But now that they split up, Meech took his lifestyle to a whole new level, and this sparked the downfall of BMF. 2002, Meech began throwing parties at his Buckhead mansion, and if you know anything about Buckhead, it's Karen Central. So potentially having noise complaints where you do business makes no sense. But not only were neighbors a concern, but how about the people attending the parties? I'm talking about Jeezy, Fabulous, Diddy, and many more. And along with this came all of their homies as well. Unfortunately, some of the people at the parties saw a golden opportunity. September 17th, 2003, 7 a.m. 3 men break into the BMF mansion through the garage. They make their way into the living room and bam! The 3 men instantly run out of the house and speed away. And here is where panic mode kicks in. BMF knows they have to clear out the mansion before Atlanta police arrive. So they quickly pack everything into the cars and drive away. They leave Doc Marshall at the house to talk to police, being that he's not a street guy. He tells police of an intruder and that he had to scare them away. All of that is well within Georgia law, but here's where things go left. Somehow the police received the consent to search the house. Atlanta police took hours scouring through the house until they found a stash in one of the bedroom closets. For this, they arrest Doc Marshall and send him to jail. Uh-oh. That's what we're all thinking, but not Big Meech or Terry. They were not alarmed and it was business as usual. The only thing that changed was now instead of house parties, they went to clubs. And everywhere Meech went, he came 100 deep of BMF members. On top of this, they were known to start problems. November 12th, 2004. It's a Friday night and Big Meech and BMF members head to Club Chaos. They throw money all night and Meech starts talking to a girl. She happens to be the girlfriend of another man at the club. That would be Anthony Jones, also known as Wolf. And this guy happens to be P. Diddy's bodyguard. While at the club, Anthony approaches Meech and tells him to stop talking to his girl. Meech takes it as disrespect and gets Anthony out of his face. Anthony is furious, so he leaves the club. Well, the night continues and Meech and his crew leave at 4 a.m. They head to the parking lot and right there is Anthony Jones. A scuffle breaks out and someone takes it to another level. Bam! The next day, Meech would go down for it, and this is where the story ends. I'm just kidding. He was actually released on self-defense a few weeks later. Atlanta police had no idea who they arrested, and that's kind of crazy to think about. They probably wrote him off as another rich executive in Atlanta. Little did they know he was running the biggest underground operation in the whole United States. Even though Atlanta thought nothing of him, the DEA decided to look into him. So they contacted the IRS to look through Big Meech's tax returns. What they found is that he made $200,000 in the previous year. This wasn't enough to afford even one of his supercars. Better yet, this couldn't even cover the down payment on one of his mansions. Something wasn't right, so they presented this to a judge and they granted them a wiretap. Interestingly enough, the first person they tapped was Terry Flannery. They thought that this would be easy, but little did they know Terry had 20 different phones. On top of this, he never actually said any names or locations over the phone. In fact, the entire BMF talked in their own specific code. They used nicknames and aliases for everything. The agents got frustrated and thought about giving up, but then Terry said something that pissed them off. While talking to an assistant, Terry said that police aren't smart enough to tap phones like they do in The Wire. This gave the agents a personal vendetta. They started staying up all night trying to figure out his code and track all of his calls. And eventually they figured it out. December 5th, 2004. It's a regular day in the BMF organization, and this means that another load is set to be delivered across the country. This time, a man named Jeffrey Lair is set to arrive at the Buckhead mansion and head up to Louisville, Kentucky. So he arrives at the mansion, the car gets loaded, and he and his girlfriend hit the interstate. Little do they know the FBI was tracking the call when Terry set the order, and this means that they knew exactly when the delivery was going to take place. But instead of a big takedown, they decided to do something clever. They contacted Missouri State Troopers to do a routine traffic stop on Jeffrey Lair. This way, BMF would have no suspicion of a large investigation. Well, Jeffrey gets pulled over in Florissant, Missouri. They search the car and find everything they wanted. So Jeffrey gets arrested and thinks nothing of it. So he calls Terry from the county jail. Boy, what a mistake. He tells Terry what happened, and this was all the feds needed. Half of the investigators wanted to arrest Terry right away. Case closed, hopefully a 10-year sentence. But the other half wanted to use this evidence to take down the entire BMF organization. The reason some of the investigators wanted to finish it now was because BMF was so hard to crack. But the lead investigator figured that he could put hard pressure on Jeffrey Lair. So he told Jeffrey that he's facing 20 years unless he gives up some information. Tough decisions. But in the meantime, BMF had no idea what was going on. BMF figured that Jeffrey would take his time. Meech and Terry's level of panic was -30. In fact, in 2005, Meech purchased a custom all-white Maybach, the only one in the United States. He also rented a $30,000 a month mansion on Miami Beach. Here, he hosted parties with all of the rappers. He also hosted vacations in Cancun where he flew everyone out on his private jets. I would call this the calm before the storm. BMF felt untouchable and were not prepared for what was coming next. October 17th, 2005. All 9 Atlanta mansions are raided by the FBI, but oddly enough, they don't find what they're looking for. Somehow, BMF had cleared everything out just in time. So still, all they had was Terry's wiretap and Jeffrey Lair. So BMF's lawyers figured that Terry might
I ain't gonna lie to you. I don't blame nobody but fucking Meech for all of that shit. I don't blame nobody but Meech, honestly.
do 10 years, but that's about it. Meech, on the other hand, had nothing against him, but then everything would crumble down. In late 2005, Doc Marshall took the witness stand against all of BMF. He had 36 members arrested, including Big Meech. This was it. The whole operation was done. All of the money
Bro, that's crazy because I said that nigga looked like a snitch. Wow, bro, that's crazy because I said that man looked like a snitch before the video even started.
Glory, chains, and mansions over with. During the case, they could not believe how large this operation was. Some estimate that they were making over $300 million a year, while Terry and Demetrius were ultimately handed 30-year sentences. But since then, BMF have become cultural icons. In fact, their name has been mentioned in hundreds of songs. Well, in 2020, Terry was released, and in 2026, Meech will be as well. And this prompted Leighton Simon to say that he believes that they snitched.
No. You got to give up somebody. You got to get bad.
But what do you guys think? Did they snitch to get out early? And on that note, if you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. Peace!
Bruh, bruh, bruh. Crazy, 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 crazy story. Absolutely crazy story. I feel like me personally, like now just going and just watching that and just him breaking it down like that, I feel like if Meech honestly wasn't so flashy and would have listened, they probably would have been still doing the same shit for multiple years. And that guy didn't make that phone call instead of just sitting in there and being quiet and shutting up. That operation probably would still be going on. Because once you start being flashy and once you start doing dumb shit, that makes everything crumble. That makes everything fall apart. That makes everything stop working. So by him actually not doing the shit that he was doing and hanging out with the people he was doing, hanging with and listening to his brother, that operation would have still kept going. Because you see, he went out there and was still low key and was still probably making his money because they didn't really touch on him too much. And then he had 20 phones, didn't do too much talking on the phone, didn't do no conversating on the phone. So he was actually smart. So I feel as though Meek should have definitely listened to his brother. He should have definitely listened to his brother. Would have saved them so much, headache, so much problem if he would have just listened to his brother, honestly, God truth. But anyway, man, it's your boy Zeus the Entertainer, man. If y'all get a chance to watch this video, make sure y'all check it out. Y'all enjoy it. Y'all watch it. Y'all have fun. Whatever y'all do. I'm about here, man.